In the winter of 1567, in a stone chamber beneath the streets of Seville, a woman named Maria Gonzalez made a decision that would haunt the corridors of history for the next 400 years. She refused to confess. What happened in the hours that followed was so profoundly disturbing that the Catholic Church would spend centuries methodically erasing every trace of it from official records. This isn't a story about religious persecution. This is a story about something far more sinister. Something that historians have only recently begun to piece together from fragments hidden in monastery walls and sealed archives that were never meant to see daylight. What you're about to hear reveals a truth so uncomfortable that it was buried beneath layers of institutional silence, a campaign of systematic violence aimed not at heretics or unbelievers but at women themselves. The Spanish Inquisition lasted 356 years, from 1478 to 1834, and during that time over 150,000 souls faced its tribunals. But here's what makes the blood run cold. 60% of them were women. Not 40, not 50, but 60%. In an era when women had virtually no public power, no political voice, and limited rights under law, they somehow became the primary targets of the most feared institution in Europe. The official explanation, recorded in countless church documents, claimed that women were simply more susceptible to heresy, more vulnerable to the whispers of darkness, more easily led astray from the path of righteousness. But recently uncovered documents tell a very different story. They reveal a coordinated effort to silence, control, and ultimately eliminate a very specific type of woman, the educated, the independent, the ones who dare to read, to teach, to question, to exist outside the boundaries of absolute male authority. The inquisitors, those robed figures who held the power of life and death in their consecrated hands, developed methods of torture that were used almost exclusively on female prisoners. These weren't generic instruments of pain. They were devices engineered with a chilling understanding of female anatomy, designed to exploit the very things that defined womanhood in that brutal age. And when these methods proved too effective, too revealing of the Inquisition's true purpose, something extraordinary happened. Orders came down from the highest levels of church authority to destroy the evidence. Manuals were burned, devices were melted down, testimony was sealed or obliterated entirely. For 4 centuries, this erasure held. The true nature of what happened in those torture chambers remained hidden, transformed into sanitized accounts of religious trials and spiritual correction. Until now, because some evidence survived, hidden in places the inquisitors never thought to look, preserved by accident or by the conscience of someone who could unbear to see these atrocities forgotten entirely. The testimony endures, and what it reveals about the systematic targeting of women, about the institutional cruelty directed specifically at female bodies and minds, forces us to rewrite everything we thought we knew about this dark chapter of history. If you believe these stories matter, if you think the suffering of 40,000 women deserves to be remembered rather than erased, then subscribe to this channel right now, because algorithms don't favor content that challenges centuries of institutional silence, and these voices need yours to be heard. The truth is fragile, and it needs witnesses. Let me take you back to that chamber in Seville, to Maria Gonzalez chained to the wall, to the moment when the Inquisitor approached her with an instrument that would come to symbolize the gendered horror of the Inquisition itself. The device in the Inquisitor's hands was called the breast ripper, and its very existence tells you everything about what the Spanish Inquisition truly was. This wasn't an instrument designed to extract confessions about religious doctrine or theological disputes. This was a weapon aimed at destroying what medieval society considered the essence of womanhood itself. The iron claws, heated until they glowed like dying suns in the dim torchlight, were designed to grip and tear away breast tissue, ensuring that even if a woman survived her ordeal, she would bear the mark of the Church's displeasure in a way that was both intimate and permanent. The psychological dimension of this torture was perhaps even more devastating than the physical. In an age when a woman's worth was measured by her ability to nurture children, this device attacked that capacity directly. It sent a message that echoed far beyond the walls of the torture chamber. Step out of line, speak when you should be silent, teach your daughters to read, question the authority of men who claim to speak for God, and we will take from you the very thing that gives you value in this world. But the breast ripper was only one weapon in an arsenal specifically designed for women. The spider's cradle forced women to balance on a pyramid of iron spikes, exploiting the fact that female anatomy could endure certain types of agony longer than male, turning biology itself into an instrument of prolonged suffering. The heretic's fork, a double-pronged device that pressed against both throat and sternum, made speaking itself an act of self-harm, silencing women in the most literal way imaginable. These devices were documented in manuals that inquisitors passed between themselves, treatises on the most effective methods of breaking female prisoners specifically. One such manual, discovered hidden in the walls of Toledo Cathedral in 2019, contained an entire chapter titled Specific Torments for Women, complete with detailed specifications and testimonials from inquisitors comparing the effectiveness of different methods. The clinical precision of these documents is what haunts you. These weren't acts of passion or rage. This was systematic, methodical, institutional violence carried out with record-keeping and quality control. The question that burns through all of this is why? Why was 60% of Inquisition victims women? Recent research has uncovered an answer that the Church spent 400 years trying to hide. 73% of women brought before Inquisition tribunals could read. In an era when female literacy rates hovered below 15%, this statistic is impossible to ignore. The Inquisition wasn't hunting heretics, it was hunting educated women. Women who were teaching their daughters. Women who were interpreting scripture for themselves. Women who were practicing medicine, running businesses, and carving out spaces of independence in a world designed to keep them silent and subservient. These women represented a threat not to religious orthodoxy, but to patriarchal power itself. And the Inquisition was the weapon deployed to eliminate that threat. When the Spanish Inquisition was finally abolished in 1834, Pope Gregory XVI issued a secret order to destroy all evidence related to what the documents called gender-specific interrogation methods. They burned records, they melted devices, they sealed testimony. For 400 years, this cover-up held, transforming a campaign of gendered violence into sanitized history lessons about religious persecution. But the Vatican kept copies of everything, and in recent years, as certain historical archives have been opened to researchers, the truth has begun to emerge from its tomb. A letter from 1823 written by a cardinal to Spanish bishops makes the conspiracy explicit. The methods employed against female heretics must never be acknowledged by Holy Mother Church, and future generations must believe these trials concerned matters of faith, not the suppression of feminine independence. 40,000 women, 40,000 lives erased, suffering buried, voices silenced for 4 centuries. The conspiracy worked. We learned about the Spanish Inquisition in school and never heard about the systematic torture of women. We studied religious persecution and never learned about the war against female literacy and independence. History was rewritten by the very institution that committed these atrocities. And for 400 years, we believed the lie. The patterns that began in those torture chambers didn't disappear when the Inquisition ended. They evolved. The institutional silencing of women, the destruction of evidence, the rewriting of history to protect power. We see these same methods today, in different forms, wielded by different institutions, but unmistakably familiar. Maria Gonzalez's screams echoed through 4 centuries of silence, but they finally reached us. The 40,000 women tortured and murdered by the Spanish Inquisition are no longer hidden. Their suffering matters, their stories matter, and the conspiracy that tried to erase them has failed. Because for every story we've uncovered, there are dozens more waiting in sealed archives and forgotten documents, stories of suffering that powerful institutions would prefer remain buried forever. These women waited for centuries for justice. Let's make sure they don't wait any longer.